The rejection came on a Tuesday. Mira had known it was coming, felt it in the way Owen's texts grew shorter, the way he angled his body away from hers at pack gatherings, the careful distance he maintained even when protocol forced them to stand side by side. The final conversation had happened 3 days ago in his truck, parked outside her house where Santi wouldn't overhear. "My father wants me to challenge for Beta when he steps down," Owen had said, staring through the windshield instead of at her. "The council's already discussing it, but they have concerns." "What concerns?" "You." He'd finally looked at her then, and his expression had been miserable. "Your father died fighting rogues. Your mother never recovered. Santi's solid, but he's not leadership material. The council thinks your bloodline is compromised. Weak foundations." The words had landed like physical blows. "So break the bond. Choose ambition over me. That's what you're saying?" "I'm saying I can't be Beta with a mate the council doesn't respect." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Mira. I love you, but I can't give up everything I've worked for." She'd gotten out of the truck without another word. Now, 3 days later, he was making it official. In front of 17 witnesses at the Crescent Vale Monthly Assembly, Owen stood with his shoulders squared and his face carefully composed. "I, Owen Talmadge of the Crescent Vale Pack, reject you, Mira Castellanos, as my mate." The bond snapped. Not broke, that implied something gradual, merciful. This was instantaneous severance, a live wire cut while still carrying current. Mira's wolf howled inside her ribcage, clawing frantically at the space where Owen's presence had lived for 3 years. The physical pain dropped her to one knee on the community center's worn wooden floor. Owen didn't reach for her. That was the part she'd remember later, and the small hours when sleep wouldn't come. He stood there with his hands at his sides, his face carefully blank, while her body tried to adjust to the sudden absence of half its soul. His father, Thomas Talmadge, stood beside him with satisfaction, poorly hidden behind a mask of neutrality. This was what they'd wanted. Owen unencumbered by a mate with weak foundations, free to pursue his ambitions without the liability of her bloodline. "Mira." Her brother Santi was there, his hand on her elbow, trying to pull her upright. "Come on, get up." She got up. That's what Castellanos did. They got up. Her father had taught her that before the rogue attack killed him, before her mother's grief swallowed their house whole, before the pack had quietly decided their family line was tainted by tragedy. Get up, keep moving, don't let them see it break you. The assembly continued around her like she was a stone in a river. Someone called for a vote on the new patrol schedule. Someone else argued about the community fund allocation. Normal pack business, as if a bond rejection wasn't a death of sorts, as if her wolf was still screaming. Mira walked out. No one stopped her. She made it to her truck before the shaking started. Her hands trembled so badly it took 3 tries to fit the key in the ignition. The engine turned over with its familiar diesel rattle, and she pulled out of the lot without checking her mirrors, without signaling, without any of the careful precision that usually governed her movements. The road blurred. She blinked hard, refusing the tears, but her vision stayed stubbornly unfocused. Not tears then, something else. The bond break affecting her sight, maybe, or her wolf's distress bleeding into her human senses. She should go home. Back to the small house she shared with Santi, where he'd make her tea she wouldn't drink and sit with her in that solid, silent way he had. Instead, she drove north, toward the county line, toward the disputed territory where Crescent Vale's land met the Ironwood Pack's holdings. Stupid. Dangerous. The Ironwood Alpha didn't tolerate trespassers, and territorial disputes had escalated in recent months. 3 confrontations since summer, each one ending with bloodshed. But Mira's wolf was clawing at her from the inside, desperate to run, to hunt, to do anything that might fill the sudden emptiness where Owen had been. She parked at the trailhead where the boundary markers started. The wooden posts were old, their carved warnings weathered nearly smooth, but the scent markers were fresh. The Ironwood Pack had reinforced their claim recently. Mira caught the layered signatures, at least a dozen wolves, all male, all carrying the aggressive musk that meant enforcer rank or higher. And underneath it all, one scent that made her wolf go still. Not still like calm, still like a rabbit that spotted a hawk's shadow. Mira knew that scent. Everyone in the region knew it, even wolves who'd never crossed the county line. Darius Kael, the Ironwood Alpha. They called him Ruthless because mercy wasn't in his vocabulary. He took control of Ironwood 5 years ago in a challenge so brutal the previous Alpha hadn't survived the night. Since then, the pack had expanded its territory 3 times, absorbing smaller packs, crushing resistance, ruling through a combination of tactical brilliance and absolute intolerance for weakness. The smart thing would be to get back in her truck. Mira shifted instead. The change rippled through her, faster than usual, her wolf surging forward with desperate eagerness. Fur replaced skin, her senses sharpened. The loam-rich smell of the forest floor, the distant sound of water over stones, the electrical charge in the air that meant a storm coming in from the west. She ran. Not towards anything, just away. Away from Owen's careful, cruel face. Away from the witnesses who'd watched her kneel. Away from the bond space inside her that echoed now like an empty room. The boundary line came up faster than she'd intended. One moment she was in Crescent Vale territory, and the next she'd crossed into the disputed zone where neither pack's claim was absolute. The trees here were older, thicker, their canopy blocking the afternoon sun. The undergrowth was dense with ferns and wild blackberry, and the game trails were narrow, winding things that forced her to slow down. She should turn back. The thought came clear and human through her wolf mind. She should absolutely turn back. Her wolf ignored it, plunging deeper into the shadowed forest. The attack came without warning. One moment she was alone, and the next a massive gray wolf slammed into her from the left, sending her tumbling through the ferns. She rolled, came up snarling, and found herself facing 3 enforcers. They were huge, easily twice her size, and they moved with the coordinated precision of wolves who'd trained together, fought together, won together. The gray lunged again. Mira dodged, but the second wolf was already there, jaws snapping closed inches from her throat. She twisted away and ran, but running was pointless. They were hurting her, she realized, driving her deeper into their territory, away from the boundary, towards something. The third wolf cut her off, and suddenly she was trapped in a rough triangle, 3 sets of teeth, 3 low warning growls that meant one thing: submit or fight. Mira's wolf chose fight. She went for the smallest of the 3, a rust-colored male who looked young enough to make mistakes. She was right, he overcommitted to his bite, and she got under his guard, her teeth finding the soft meat of his shoulder. He yelped and fell back, and for one bright moment, she thought she might actually break through. Then the gray hit her again, and this time his teeth found purchase. Pain exploded through her hind leg. She felt the snap before she heard it, bone giving way under the crusher pressure of his jaws. Her wolf tried to pull free, but the other 2 were on her now, pinning her, their combined weight forcing her down into the damp earth. She should submit, show throat, accept defeat before they decided to do permanent damage. Her wolf, raw and raging from the rejection, refused. She fought until the gray enforcer's teeth found her scruff, until the complete dominance hold forced her body into stillness, even as her mind screamed resistance. She fought until enough. One word, but it cut through the violence like a blade through silk. The enforcers released her immediately, stepping back, their heads lowering in automatic deference. Mira's wolf tried to rise and couldn't. The broken leg wouldn't bear weight, and the bite wounds along her ribs were bleeding freely, matting her fur, turning the ground beneath her dark and wet. She lifted her head and saw him. Darius Kael in wolf form was black as midnight, bigger even than his enforcers, with ice-pale eyes that seemed to see straight through skin to the bones beneath. He stood 20 feet away, utterly motionless, watching her with an intensity that made her wolf's desperate aggression finally falter. This wasn't an enforcer she could fight. This wasn't even an alpha she could challenge. This was an apex predator, and she was bleeding in his territory. Her wolf dropped her head. Not submission, not quite, but acknowledgement. She'd lost. They both knew it. Darius moved closer, each step deliberate, giving her time to track his approach. When he was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, smell the evergreen and stone scent that marked him, he shifted. The change was seamless, graceful in a way that spoke to absolute control. One moment a wolf, the next a man crouching in the ferns, naked and utterly unconcerned by it. His human form was as imposing as his wolf, broad-shouldered, heavily muscled, with the kind of scars that told stories of violence survived. His hair was black as his fur, long enough to touch his shoulders, and those pale eyes were even more unsettling in a human face. "Your crescent veil," he said, not a question. Mira's wolf whined, the sound escaping before she could stop it. The pain was getting worse, spreading from her leg up into her hip, and the bite wounds were deeper than she'd thought. "Shift," Darius said, "now." It wasn't a request. The alpha command rolled through her, irresistible, dragging her unwilling wolf back into human form. The change hurt worse than it should have, the broken bone grating, the torn flesh pulling. She ended up on her side in the dirt, naked and shaking, her leg bent at an angle that made her stomach lurch. Darius studied her with that same unnerving intensity. "Name." "Mira." Her voice came out hoarse. "Mira Castellanos." "Why are you in my territory, Mira Castellanos?" The honest answer, because my mate rejected me 2 hours ago and I stopped thinking clearly, seemed pathetic. But lying to an alpha was worse than pathetic. It was suicidal. "I wasn't thinking. I crossed without meaning to." His eyes narrowed. "You smell of bond break." Of course he could smell it. Fresh rejection left a signature, sharp and chemical, like ozone after lightning. It probably rolled off her in waves. "Yes," she said. "Who?" "Owen Talmadge." Something flickered across Darius's face. Not sympathy, she doubted he knew what that felt like, but something. Recognition, maybe. "The Crescent Vale Beta's son." "Yes." "He rejected you at assembly." Not a question this time either. Darius knew. Somehow he knew. Mira managed a nod. Speaking was getting harder. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving nothing but pain and a creeping cold that started in her extremities and worked inward. Darius stood in one fluid movement. "Garrett," he said, not raising his voice, but one of the enforcers, the gray who'd broken her leg, shifted immediately to human form. "Get Naomi. Tell her confound fracture, multiple lacerations, likely shock." "Alpha," Garrett started. "Now." The enforcer's jaw tightened, but he turned and ran, shifting mid-stride back to wolf, disappearing into the trees. Darius crouched again, this time close enough to touch her. His hand hovered over her broken leg, not quite making contact. "This is going to hurt," he said, "but if I don't set it before my healer arrives, you'll heal crooked." "Don't," Mira started, but his hands were already moving. The pain whited out her vision. She heard herself scream, a raw animal sound, and then Darius's hand was on the back of her neck, his grip firm and strangely grounding. "Breathe," he said. "Just breathe through it." She tried. The world stayed blurry and tilted, but her lungs remembered how to function. In, out. In, out. "Why haven't you passed out?" Darius asked. His hand stayed on her neck, his thumb resting against her pulse point. "Castellanos don't pass out," Mira managed. It was something her father used to say. Stupid bravado, but it was all she had. Stubborn bloodline, then. Was that approval in his voice? Impossible to tell. They waited in silence. Darius didn't move, didn't release her, his presence a solid anchor while pain rolled through her in waves. The forest around them was quiet, even the birds had stopped singing. This close she could feel his wolf, vast and predatory just beneath his skin. Her own wolf should have been terrified. Instead, inexplicably, it went still. Not the frozen prey stillness from before, something else, something that felt almost like recognition. No, that was impossible. The bond break had scrambled her instincts, that was all. There was no recognition. There couldn't be. Footsteps approached, 2 sets, both light and quick. The healer, Naomi, appeared through the trees with Garrett behind her. She was small for a wolf, barely 5 feet, with steel gray hair and hands that moved with the confidence of decades of practice. She took one look at Mira's leg and whistled low. "You don't do anything halfway, do you?" She knelt beside her, her fingers already probing the break with surprising gentleness. "I'm going to clean the wounds first, then splint this. We'll get you back to the compound for proper setting." "I can't go to your compound. I need to get back." "You're not going anywhere on this leg," Naomi said, "and you're sure as hell not shifting again until it heals. You want to walk with a limp for the rest of your life?" Darius stood, putting distance between himself and Mira for the first time since he'd arrived. "She stays until she's stable," he said to Naomi, then to Garrett. "Contact Crescent Vale. Let them know we have one of theirs. Medical situation, not a capture." "Alpha, they'll see it as weakness." "I don't care what they see it as." The temperature in the clearing seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Make the call." Garrett's jaw worked, but he nodded and shifted, loping back the way he'd come, disappearing back the way he'd come. Naomi worked efficiently, cleaning the bite wounds with something that burned like acid, wrapping Mira's leg in a makeshift splint fashioned from straight branches and strips of cloth that she produced from her seemingly bottomless bag. The whole time Darius stood at the edge of the clearing, his back to them, his posture radiating tension. "He's going to catch hell for this," Naomi said quietly as she worked. "Helping a trespasser? The pack won't like it." "Then why is he doing it?" Mira asked through gritted teeth. Naomi's hands paused. She looked at Mira with dark, knowing eyes. "You really don't know?" "What?" But Naomi just shook her head and went back to wrapping. "Not my place to say." When she finished, 2 more wolves arrived, younger males who carried a stretcher fashioned from canvas and poles. They loaded her onto the stretcher with surprising care, and then they were moving, deeper into Ironwood territory, farther from the boundary and any hope of escape. The Ironwood compound was nothing like Crescent Vale's sprawling community center and scattered homes. This was a fortress, high walls, guard towers, reinforced gates. They carried her through the main entrance past wolves who stopped and stared, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Mira kept her eyes forward, refusing to show fear even as her wolf curled tight inside her, overwhelmed by the concentrated predator scent of so many powerful wolves in one place. They took her to a building near the center of the compound, the medical facility from the smell of antiseptic and herbs. Inside was clean and well-equipped, more clinic than the makeshift infirmary Crescent Vale maintained. They transferred her to a proper bed, and Naomi started an IV, while another healer, a young man named Michael, began preparing tools for setting her leg. "This is going to require sedation," Naomi said, glancing at Darius, who'd followed them inside and now stood by the door like a sentinel. "She needs to be completely out for the procedure." Darius nodded. "Do it." "Wait," Mira said. "I need to call my brother. He'll be worried." "Already handled," Darius said. "Your pack beta is on his way." Not Santi, then. Thomas, Owen's father, the man who'd stood silent while his son rejected her in front of the assembly. Perfect. "I don't want—" Mira started, but Naomi was already pushing something into her IV line, and the world went soft at the edges. "Sleep," Darius said. His voice seemed to come from very far away. "You're safe here." That should have been absurd. She was in enemy territory, surrounded by wolves who had no reason to help her. But her wolf believed him. as consciousness slipped away, that was the strangest part. Her wolf, still raw from rejection, somehow trusted the most dangerous alpha in 3 counties to keep her safe. Mira woke to voices arguing. Flagrant disregard for pack security. She was injured. She was trespassing. Our law is clear. Enough. Darius's voice cut through the others like a knife. My decision stands. She stays until she's healed. Mira kept her eyes closed, listening. The sedation had left her groggy, her thoughts moving through molasses, but she could piece together the basics. Pack council, by the sound of it. Multiple voices, all male, all angry. The Crescent Vale Beta is demanding her return. This situation could escalate. Let it, Darius said. Silence. Then, Alpha, with respect, your personal interest in this female, watch your tone. The threat in those 3 words was unmistakable. The voices dropped to murmurs too low for her to follow. Mira risked opening her eyes to slits. She was still in the medical facility, but in a private room now. Late afternoon sunlight streamed through high windows. Her leg was in a proper cast, elevated, and the bite wounds had been cleaned and dressed. Someone had covered her with a blanket, and there was a pitcher of water on the bedside table with a glass already poured. The door opened. Darius entered alone, closing it behind him with a quiet click. He looked tired, not physically, but something deeper. He moved to the window, stood there with his back to her, his shoulders tense. You can stop pretending to sleep, he said without turning around. Mira opened her eyes fully. How long was I out? 6 hours. He finally turned to face her. Your beta left 3 hours ago. I convinced him you needed to remain stable before transport. Convinced him how? A slight curve of his mouth, not quite a smile. Diplomatically. That probably meant threats barely veiled as concern. Why are you helping me? Because you were injured in my territory under my watch. That's not a reason to start a diplomatic incident. No, he agreed, it's not. He moved closer, stopping at the foot of her bed. This close, with her wolf still sluggish from sedation, she could really look at him. There were scars on his arms, his chest, claw marks, bite marks, old burns, a map of violence. But his face was unreadable, all hard angles and controlled stillness. Your pack is expecting you back tomorrow. Naomi says you're stable enough to transport by then. And you're just going to let me go? Mira phrased it as no question. Should I not? I trespassed, fought your enforcers. That's usually grounds for challenge or execution in your pack. Usually, Darius agreed, but you weren't hunting, you weren't scouting, you were running from a bond break and you crossed into territory you knew was dangerous. That's not aggression, that's self-destruction. The accuracy of that hit harder than she expected. Mira looked away, toward the window and the compound beyond. So you're showing mercy. I didn't think that was in your vocabulary. It's not. He was quiet for a moment. This isn't mercy. She looked back at him. Then what is it? But he didn't answer. Instead, he moved to the door, his hand on the handle. Rest. You'll need your strength for the journey back. Darius. His name felt strange on her tongue, too familiar, too intimate for what they were. Why am I really here? He paused, his back to her. Because the moment I scented you in my territory, my wolf recognized you as mine. He opened the door, and that's a complication neither of us needs. Then he was gone, and Mira was alone with the echo of those words. Mine. Impossible. She'd just broken a mate bond. There was no way. The universe didn't work like that. You didn't lose one mate and find another in the same day. That wasn't how bonds formed. Except her wolf was rising inside her, no longer sluggish, suddenly alert and focused. And the space where Owen had been, that hollow, aching absence, didn't feel quite so empty anymore. No, this was shock, or medication, or her wolf's instincts scrambled by trauma. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Mira closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but the rest of the night was restless, filled with half-dreams where pale wolf eyes watched her from the shadows. Morning came too soon, and not soon enough. Naomi arrived with breakfast, actual food, not hospital bland, but rich venison stew and fresh bread that made Mira's mouth water despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. "Eat," Naomi ordered, setting the tray across Mira's lap. "You're going to need the energy. Thomas Talmadge's been calling every hour since dawn, and he's not known for his patience." Mira forced down the stew, barely tasting it. Through the window, she could see wolves moving through the compound, morning patrol shifts changing, enforcers training in the yard, normal pack life. Several of them glanced toward the medical facility as they passed, their expressions curious. "They all know I'm here," Mira said. "Curse they do. Nothing stays secret in a pack this size." Naomi checked Mira's IV, her movements brisk and efficient. "You're the most interesting thing that's happened in months. Trespasser that the Alpha personally brought in, kept overnight, protected from council. People talk." "What are they saying?" "That you must be someone important, or someone the Alpha wants." Naomi met her eyes. "Are you?" "I'm nobody, just a mid-rank wolf from a smaller pack." "Honey, the Alpha doesn't personally intervene for nobody." Naomi pulled the IV. "But that's between you and him. I'm just here to make sure you don't die on my watch." An hour later, Thomas Talmadge arrived with an escort of 3 Crescent Vale enforcers. Mira heard them before she saw them, raised voices at the compound entrance, the aggressive posturing of wolves who felt they had leverage. Then Darius's voice, cold and cutting, and the voices fell silent. They came to her room together, Darius and Thomas, with the 3 Crescent Vale enforcers trailing like uncertain shadows. Thomas was a big man, gray-haired and barrel-chested, with the kind of presence that came from decades of beta authority, but next to Darius, he looked diminished somehow, smaller. "Mira." Thomas's expression was carefully neutral. "How are you feeling?" "Like your son destroyed me yesterday, and now you're here to collect the pieces." "Stable enough to travel, apparently." "Good. We'll get you home then." He glanced at Darius. "With the Alpha's permission, of course." "She's free to go," Darius said, but his eyes were on Mira, not Thomas. "We appreciate the medical care, though the circumstances that required it were unfortunate. Your pack's territorial education appears lacking. She crossed 3 scent markers before my enforcers found her." "Mira knows the boundaries. This was—" Thomas hesitated, clearly weighing his words. "An aberration. It won't happen again." "See that it doesn't." Darius finally looked at Thomas. "The next Crescent Vale wolf I find in my territory won't receive medical care. They'll receive justice." The threat hung in the air between them. Thomas's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Understood." They transferred her to a wheelchair, Naomi's orders, despite Mira's protests that she could manage crutches. One of Thomas's enforcers pushed, while the other 2 flanked them, and they moved through the compound toward the main gate. Mira kept her eyes forward, trying to ignore the stares, the whispers, the weight of dozens of ironwood wolves watching her leave. At the gate, Darius was waiting. He didn't speak, didn't approach, just stood there as they loaded her into Thomas's SUV, his expression unreadable, his arms crossed over his chest. But his eyes never left her, and her wolf strained to him with an intensity that made her chest ache. Not real, she told herself, not possible. But as they drove away, she looked back through the rear window and found him still standing there, motionless as stone, watching her disappear. Home was supposed to be a relief. Instead, it felt like walking into a tomb. Santi had cleaned, she noticed. The house was spotless, dishes done, laundry folded. He'd even bought groceries, filling the fridge with her favorite foods. But he couldn't clean away the echo of Owen's presence, the jacket still hanging by the door, the coffee mug he'd always used sitting in the drainer, the photos on the mantel from when they'd been happy.
"I'll get rid of his stuff," Santi said quietly, helping her settle on the couch with her leg elevated. "Just say the word." "Not yet," Mira said. She didn't know why. Maybe because removing Owen's things would make the rejection feel final, real, permanent. Santi sat in the armchair across from her, his dark eyes worried. He was built like their father had been, compact and sturdy, with the kind of quiet strength that didn't need to broadcast itself. Owen had always been a little intimidated by Santi, though he'd never admitted it. "What happened yesterday?" Santi asked. "Thomas said you crossed into Ironwood territory, but that doesn't sound like you." "I wasn't thinking clearly." "Obviously." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "The whole pack's talking, Mira. They're saying the Ironwood Alpha personally brought you in, that he kept you overnight against protocol, that he almost started a territorial dispute with Thomas over releasing you." "Thomas exaggerates." "Does he?" Santi studied her face. "Because the version I'm hearing sounds like the most dangerous Alpha in the region claimed you." Mira's heart stuttered. "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Then why do you smell like him?" She'd showered that morning. Naomi had helped her, keeping the cast dry. But wolf scent lingered deeper than soap and water could reach, especially Alpha scent, especially when it had been intentionally marked. When had Darius marked her? The memory came back. His hand on her neck when he'd set her leg, his thumb against her pulse. That was scent marking, subtle but unmistakable. "He was helping me," Mira said weakly. "That's all." "Mira," Santi's voice was gentle but firm. "I know you're hurting, and I know Owen's rejection was—" He stopped, visibly struggling for words. "Cruel, public, wrong. But running to another Alpha isn't the answer, especially not him. Darius Kael is dangerous." "I'm not running to anyone," Mira snapped. "I made a mistake, crossed a border I shouldn't have, and he chose not to execute me for it. That's the whole story." Santi looked like he wanted to argue, but he just sighed. Okay. I'm glad you're alive, whatever the circumstances." He stood. "I'm going to make you lunch. You need to eat." He disappeared into the kitchen, and Mira closed her eyes, letting her head fall back against the couch cushions. Her wolf was pacing inside her, restless and agitated. The pain medication had worn off, and her leg throbbed in time with her heartbeat. But worse than the physical pain was the pull, a new awareness sitting in her chest like a second heartbeat, tugging her north, toward the county line, toward him. Not real, she told herself again, just trauma. Just her wolf trying to fill the void Owen left. But the pull didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. 3 days passed in a haze of medication and visitors. Pack members stopped by in a steady stream, some genuinely concerned, others clearly just hunting for gossip. They brought food, flowers, awkward condolences about the rejection that made everything worse. Mira smiled and thanked them and answered their veiled questions about Ironwood with non-answers that satisfied no one. Owen didn't come. She told herself she was relieved. On the 4th day, Santi's phone rang while he was making dinner. He heard his voice from the kitchen, carefully neutral, then a long silence. When he returned, his expression was grim. "That was Alpha Marcus," he said. "Marcus Whitley, Crescent Vale's Alpha. A fair leader but weak, prone to following council consensus rather than making hard decisions. He's calling a pack assembly tomorrow night. He wants you there." Mira's stomach dropped. "Why?" "He wouldn't say, but Thomas and 3 council members requested it." Santi sat beside her, his voice dropping. "Mira, they're going to ask about Ironwood, about what happened there, and they're not going to accept vague answers." "I didn't do anything wrong." "You crossed into hostile territory 4 days after a public bond rejection and came back carrying an enemy Alpha's scent. To the council, that looks like either treason or catastrophic judgment." He took her hand. "You need to be careful what you say tomorrow." She wanted to argue that she had nothing to hide, but the truth was complicated in ways she couldn't explain to herself. How could she tell the council about the recognition in Darius's eyes, about the way her wolf had calmed under his hand, about the pull that hadn't faded but grown stronger with each passing day. They'd call her unstable, compromised, a security risk. They might be right. That night, Mira dreamed of pale eyes and a voice that rumbled through her like thunder. Mine. The assembly room was packed. Mira hadn't expected the crowd. Usually these meetings drew maybe 30 wolves, enough for quorum but not the whole pack. Tonight there were at least 60, maybe more, filling the rows of folding chairs and lining the walls. They fell silent when she entered on crutches, Santi steady at her elbow. Alpha Marcus stood at the front with the council, 6 wolves, Thomas among them. Mira Castellanos, Marcus's voice carried easily across the sudden silence. Thank you for coming despite your injury. Please, sit. Santi helped her to a chair at the front, positioned directly in everyone's sightline. She felt the weight of 60 pairs of eyes, some sympathetic, most just curious. Marcus cleared his throat. We've called this assembly to address a serious security matter. 4 days ago, Mira crossed into Ironwood Pack territory without authorization. She was discovered by their enforcers and taken to their compound, where she remained overnight before being released. This incident has raised questions that require answers. He looked directly at Mira. Mira, can you explain your actions that day? She'd prepared for this, practiced the words with Santi. Keep it simple. Don't elaborate. Don't mention Darius.
I was dealing with personal matters, she said, proud of how steady her voice sounded. I went for a drive, ended up at the county line, shifted and ran without paying attention to boundary markers. It was poor judgment. It won't happen again. Personal matters, Thomas repeated from the council table. You mean your rejection? The word hung in the air. Several wolves shifted uncomfortably. Owen's shoulders tensed. Yes, Mira said. And in your emotional state, Thomas continued, you accidentally crossed 3 separate scent markers, penetrated a mile into hostile territory, and engaged 4 Ironwood enforcers in combat. I wasn't thinking clearly. Clearly not. Thomas leaned forward. What happened after the enforcers found you? They injured me, broke my leg, several bite wounds. Their alpha arrived and ordered medical care. Darius Kael personally intervened. Yes. Why? Because his wolf recognized me, because he marked me, because something happened in that forest clearing that I still don't understand. You'd have to ask him, Mira said. We can't ask him, but we can ask you. Thomas's eyes were hard. What was the nature of your interaction with the Ironwood Alpha? The room had gone completely silent. Even the wolves standing against the walls had gone still. He ordered medical care, Mira repeated. He informed you of the situation. He allowed me to leave once I was stable, that's all. That's not all, Thomas stood. You returned carrying his scent, alpha-level scent marking. That's not standard medical protocol. Her heart was hammering now. He touched my neck while setting my broken bone. It wasn't intentional. Wasn't it? Thomas looked at Alpha Marcus. With respect, Alpha, I believe Mira is either lying to us or dangerously naive about what happened. Darius Kael doesn't show mercy. He doesn't provide aid to trespassers. And he certainly doesn't scent mark enemy pack members unless he's claiming them. The whispers started immediately, a ripple of shock moving through the crowd. That's not, Mira started. Is it true? Marcus asked quietly. Did he claim you? No, he said. She stopped, realizing her mistake. He said what? Thomas pounced. What did he say to you, Mira? She could lie, should lie, but 60 wolves were staring at her, and Owen was finally looking at her with something like concern, and Santi was gripping the back of her chair so hard she could hear the metal creak. He said his wolf recognized me, Mira said, but nothing happened, no claim, no bond. I came home. The silence this time was absolute. Then Thomas laughed, sharp, bitter, humorless. His wolf recognized you. 4 days after my son rejected you, the most dangerous alpha in the region claims his wolf recognized you, and you expect us to believe nothing happened? I didn't ask for any of this, Mira said, her voice rising. I didn't ask Owen to reject me. I didn't ask to cross into Ironwood territory, and I certainly didn't ask Darius Kael to recognize me as anything. But he did. Marcus's voice was thoughtful now, assessing. This changes the political situation significantly. With respect, Alpha, I don't see how, Mira started. If the Ironwood Alpha has claimed interest in you, even informally, you've become a bargaining chip. Thomas was looking at Marcus now, not her. We could use this, negotiate better territory terms, trade agreements. You want to use me as leverage. Mira couldn't keep the fury from her voice. You want to protect this pack, Thomas shot back. If Darius Kael wants you, we need to determine why and how we can benefit from it. No, the word came from Owen. He stood, his face pale. You're talking about selling her to Ironwood like she's property. That's exactly my concern. He finally looked at Mira. I rejected you. That doesn't give anyone the right to trade you away. How noble, Thomas said coldly, but you gave up any say in her future when you broke the bond. She's still Pack, Owen insisted. She deserves protection, not exploitation. She's a security risk, another council member, Peter Trent, old guard, traditional. If the Ironwood Alpha has marked her, her loyalties are compromised. We should ask her to leave Crescent Vale territory. Exile? Santi's voice cut through the arguing. For being injured in enemy territory, that's your solution? It's precedent, Peter said. Wolves who carry enemy marks can't be trusted. Enough. Marcus raised his hand, and the room fell silent again. He looked at Mira with something that might have been sympathy. Mira, I know this isn't fair, but Peter has a point. Your presence here creates complications we're not equipped to handle. If Darius Kael has truly claimed interest in you, even informally, remaining in our pack puts everyone at risk. You're exiling me? The words felt unreal. We're suggesting you might be safer elsewhere, Marcus said carefully. You have family in other packs, yes? Your mother's sister in Silver Creek. Mira wanted to argue, to fight, to make them see reason, but the faces around her were closed, afraid. They'd already decided. She was too much risk, too much trouble, too entangled with the wrong Alpha. When? She asked. We'll give you 2 weeks to settle your affairs, Marcus said. I'm sorry, Mira, truly. She stood, balancing on her crutches, and turned to leave. The crowd parted for her like she was already gone. Santi followed her out, his silence more eloquent than words. The first message came 3 days later. Mira was packing, slowly given the cast, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost deleted it, but something made her open it. How is your leg? No signature, but she knew that terse, direct style. She should delete it, block the number, but her fingers typed before her brain could stop them. Healing. I'll have the cast off in 3 weeks. The response came immediately. Good.
Then, after a pause, I heard about the assembly. Of course he had. Information flowed between packs despite the boundaries and hostilities, especially information about something this dramatic. Then you know they're exiling me, she typed. Where will you go? Silver Creek, my aunt's pack. That's west. A statement, flat and emotionless through text. Yes. Another pause, longer this time. When her phone buzzed again, it was just 2 words. Don't go. Mira stared at the screen. Then, what choice do I have? Come here. Her heart stopped, then started again, triple time. To Ironwood? Yes. That's insane. Your pack already thinks I'm a security risk. My pack thinks what I tell them to think. Come here. Your wolf knows it's right. And the terrible thing was, her wolf did know, had known since that first moment in the forest, was clawing at her now, desperate to run north, to follow the pull that hadn't faded. I can't, she typed. This is happening too fast. 4 days ago I had a mate. Now you're asking me to, what? Join your pack? Accept a claim? I'm asking you to trust what your wolf is telling you. My wolf is confused. traumatized, not thinking clearly. Your wolf is the only part of you thinking clearly. A pause. I'll be at the county line tomorrow at sunset, North Trailhead. If you want answers, meet me there. Then nothing. No pressure, no demands, just an invitation and a deadline. Mira set the phone down and pressed her palms against her eyes. This was madness. She should block the number, finish packing, accept the exile to Silver Creek and whatever quiet life awaited her there. Instead, she told Santi she needed space, borrowed his truck since hers was still at the repair shop from the boundary marker she'd hit in her distracted driving, and drove north. He was waiting when she arrived. Darius stood at the tree line, human form, wearing dark jeans and a jacket that did nothing to hide the predator underneath. The setting sun turned his black hair red gold, and those pale eyes tracked her as she parked and carefully maneuvered out of the truck with her crutches. "You came," he said. "For answers, not for anything else." Fair enough. He didn't approach, giving her space. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." "Nothing. How to make sense of this?" "Why did you mark me?" "Because the moment I scented you, my wolf went quiet for 5 years." He said it like he was reciting facts, simple and undeniable. Certain of what? That you were ours to protect. The possessiveness should have frightened her. Instead, it sent heat through her chest. That's not how bonds work. You can't just decide. "You didn't decide, neither did you." He took a step closer. "Your wolf felt it too. That's why you're here instead of halfway to Silver Creek." "My wolf is confused." "Your wolf is honest." Another step. "Human minds lie to us, tell us what we should want, should feel, should do. But our wolves know. They always know." Mira's grip tightened on her crutches. "Owen was my mate for 3 years. The bond was real, strong, and he broke it. Because it wasn't right." Darius's voice was gentle now, almost careful. "You felt it, didn't you, even before the rejection? Something missing? Some fundamental piece that never quite fit?" She had. God help her, she had. The bond with Owen was comfortable, safe, but never overwhelming, never inevitable. She'd told herself that was maturity, that passionate bonds were for romance novels, not real life. "This is too fast," she whispered. Yes. He was close enough now that she could smell evergreen and stone, could feel the heat of him. "Your pack will never accept me. I'm Crescent Vale." "You were Crescent Vale. They exiled you." Blunt, brutal honesty. "You have no pack now, which means you're free to choose a new one." "And if I choose Silver Creek?" Something flickered in his eyes, not quite pain, but close. "Then I'll let you go, Mira. I won't force this. A bond only works if both wolves want it." "And you want it?" "Yes." No hesitation, no doubt. "I want you in my pack, in my home, as my mate if you'll have me, but I want you willing, I want you sure." Her wolf was howling now, desperate and certain, but her human mind was throwing up every objection, every fear, every reason this was impossible. "I need time," she said finally. "How much?" "I don't know. Weeks? Maybe months?" He nodded slowly. "You have until your cast comes off, 3 weeks. Spend them wherever you want, Silver Creek, here, wandering the damn wilderness if that's what you need. But when the cast comes off, come to Ironwood. Spend 1 week with me, with the pack. See if it fits. If it doesn't, I'll let you go with no pressure, no pursuit. And if it does? Then we do this right, formal claim, pack acceptance, mating ceremony, everything you should have had with Owen and didn't." The sunset was fading, shadows growing long between the trees. Mira should leave, should get back in the truck and drive away from this impossible, dangerous, inevitable thing. Instead, she asked, "Why me?" "I don't know." He reached up, slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand settled on her neck, thumb against her pulse, exactly where it had been in the forest. "I just know that my wolf has been at war with the world for 5 years,
And one breath of your scent made it go quiet. That's not nothing." "No," she agreed, "it's not nothing." They stood there as the sun set completely, his hand on her neck, her wolf finally still. The 3 weeks passed in a strange liminal space. Mira went to Silver Creek as planned, staying with her Aunt Elena in a small house on the pack's southern edge. Elena asked no questions, just gave her space and time to heal. The Silver Creek wolves were kind but distant, treating her like a temporary guest rather than potential packmate. Darius texted daily, never pushing, just checking in. "How's the leg? Did you sleep? The rain here is relentless." She responded with equal restraint. "Healing well. A few hours. At least it's not snow yet." But at night her dreams were full of pale eyes and possibilities. Santi visited twice, bringing her belongings, staying a few days each time. He didn't mention Darius, didn't ask about her plans, just sat with her in comfortable silence, her steadiest anchor. On the second visit he finally spoke about it. "Are you going to Ironwood?" "I don't know." "Your wolf knows." She looked at him, surprised. "How can you tell?" "Because you haven't unpacked." He gestured at the boxes still stacked in Elena's guest room. 3 weeks here and you're still living out of suitcases. That's not someone settling in." He was right. Some part of her had already decided. The cast came off on a Tuesday, 3 weeks to the day from the rejection. The doctor cleared her for full weight-bearing, light exercise, no shifting for another week. Mira walked out of the clinic without crutches and felt almost normal again. Almost. That night she made the call. "I want to see Ironwood. 1 week, like you promised." "When?" No triumph in his voice, just quiet certainty. "Tomorrow. I'll drive up in the morning." "I'll be waiting." She ended the call and sat in the darkness of Elena's guest room, her wolf finally quiet, finally sure. Santi drove her to the county line the next morning, the truck loaded with what little she'd brought to Silver Creek. "You don't have to do this," he said as they approached the Ironwood boundary. "You can stay in Silver Creek, build a life there." "I can't." She looked at her brother, this person who'd been her rock through everything. "My wolf knows where home is now, and it's not here." He pulled over at the north trailhead, the same place she'd met Darius 3 weeks ago. "Then promise me something. If this doesn't feel right, if he or his pack or any of this feels wrong, you call me. I'll come get you. No questions, no judgment." "I promise." He pulled her into a hug, fierce and protective. "I love you. Don't forget that." "I won't." When she got out of the truck, Darius was there, leaning against a black SUV. He was dressed casually, jeans, dark sweater, but he still radiated that alpha intensity that made him impossible to ignore. "Ready?" he asked. Mira looked back at Santi's truck, at the road that led back to familiar safety, then at Darius, at the unknown future waiting north. "Yes," she said, "I'm ready." The Ironwood compound looked different in daylight without pain and fear clouding her vision. It was still imposing, high walls, guard towers, but also beautiful. The main buildings were built from local stone and timber, blending into the forested hills. Gardens stretched between structures, winter bare but clearly well tended. Wolves moved through the space with purpose but not urgency, and several of them waved or nodded at Darius as they passed. "It's bigger than I thought," Mira said. "We're one of the largest packs in the region, about 200 wolves. Most live on site, some have homes in town. We're structured more like a small town than traditional pack housing." He pulled into a parking area near the center of the compound. Alpha's residence, she realized. It was built from the same stone and timber as the others, but larger, with a wide porch and windows that overlooked the central green. Inside was surprisingly warm, not just temperature, though a fire crackled in the stone fireplace, but atmosphere. Worn rugs on polished wood floors, comfortable furniture, bookshelves lined with actual books. It felt lived in, real. Guest room is upstairs, second door to the left. Your own bathroom, privacy. You're not a prisoner here, Mira. You can go anywhere in the compound, meet anyone, leave if you want. Just like that? Just like that. He moved to the kitchen, an open space that flowed into the living area. Are you hungry? I was about to make lunch. The domesticity of it, this dangerous alpha offering to make her lunch in his kitchen, should have been jarring. Instead, it felt strangely natural. I could eat, she said. They ate sandwiches at the kitchen island while Darius explained Ironwood's structure. It was more organized than Crescent Vale, with clear hierarchies but also more autonomy. Wolves chose their roles, enforcers, scouts, administration, trades, based on skill and interest rather than bloodline. There was a council, but Darius made final decisions, and his word was law. That doesn't sound democratic, Mira observed. It's not, but it's efficient and it keeps wolves alive. He met her eyes. I don't rule by committee. If that's a problem, say so now. I spent 3 years in a pack where the alpha couldn't make a decision without consulting 6 council members and taking a vote. Efficient sounds good. Something that might have been approval flickered across his face.
After lunch, she showed her the compound properly, the training yard where enforcers sparred, the communal gardens where wolves grew vegetables and herbs, the school where pack pups learned reading, math, and shift control, the library, the workshop, the massive kitchen where pack meals were prepared. Everywhere they went, wolves stopped to stare, some curious, some suspicious, but all respectful toward Darius. He introduced her simply as Mira, visiting from Silver Creek, no mention of mate bonds or claims. Several wolves nodded politely. A few ventured cautious smiles. "They're waiting to see if you'll stay," Darius said as they walked back toward the Alpha's residence. "New wolves are rare here. We don't recruit often." "Why not?" "Because I need wolves I can trust absolutely. Quality over quantity." He paused at the residence steps. "Tomorrow I'll introduce you to the inner circle, my beta, head enforcer, council. They'll be harder to win over than the general pack, but they're the ones you'll work with most if you stay." If you stay, not when. He was giving her the out, the option to walk away. That night, Mira lay in the guest room, spacious, comfortable, with a window overlooking the darkened compound, and listened to the sounds of the pack settling for sleep. Distant voices, closing doors, the soft pad of paws on patrol. Her wolf was content for the first time in weeks. Not just content, happy. This felt right, felt like home. But could she really do this? Leave everything she'd known for a pack she'd met days ago? An alpha she barely knew? Tomorrow she'd meet his inner circle. After that, she'd decide. Naomi was at breakfast. Mira came downstairs to find the healer already in Darius's kitchen, making coffee with the ease of long familiarity. She looked up when Mira entered and smiled. "Morning. Sleep okay?" "Better than expected." Glance around. "Where's Darius?" "Morning patrol. He'll be back in an hour." Naomi poured 2 mugs of coffee, pushed one across the counter. "Figured I'd come by, see how you're settling." They sat at the island, and Naomi asked careful, neutral questions about her leg, her sleep, whether she needed anything. But underneath the small talk was assessment. "You're wondering if I'm good for him," Mira said. Naomi didn't deny it. "I've known Darius since he challenged for Alpha, watched him build this pack from something barely functional into what it is now. He's a good leader, fair, strategic, protective, but he's also been alone that whole time. No mate, no second, just constant vigilance. And you think I'll distract him. You think I already have." Naomi sipped her coffee. "He's been different since he found you, calmer, more present, like something settled in him." "That doesn't mean I belong here." "No," Naomi agreed, "but it's a start." Darius returned an hour later with 3 wolves in tow. He introduced them in the living room. Rufus, his beta, a lean, sharp-eyed man in his 40s. Garrett, head enforcer and the gray wolf who'd broken her leg, and Diana, council lead, a woman with silver-threaded black hair and the kind of presence that suggested she suffered no fools. They sat, and the assessment began. "Why Ironwood?" Rufus asked, direct, no preamble. "My wolf knows this is where I belong. I can't explain it better than that. Not running from Crescent Vale, not using us as refuge. Crescent Vale exiled me. I'm not running from anything." Diana leaned forward. "You were mate bonded for 3 years. That leaves a mark. How do we know you're not using Darius as a rebound, a way to fill the empty space?" The bluntness should have offended her. Instead, she appreciated it. "I don't know that I'm not, but I'm not asking for anything immediate. I'm here for a week to see if this fits. If it doesn't, I leave." "And if it does?" Garrett's voice was rough, suspicious. "You just join the pack, accept a mate claim? That simple?" "Nothing about this is simple," Mira said. "But yes, if this feels right after a week, I'm staying." They asked more questions about her skills, decent fighter, better strategist, her family, minimal, just Santi, her expectations, none, beyond honesty. Through it all, Darius sat silent, letting her handle the interrogation herself. Finally, Diana sat back. "You're either very confident or very naive." "Maybe both," Mira admitted. That got a surprised laugh from Rufus. "She's honest, at least," he said. He looked at Darius. "Your call, Alpha." "She stays the week," Darius said. "After that, we'll see." The inner circle left and Mira sagged against the couch. That was intense. "That was them being polite," Darius said. He sat beside her, not touching but close enough that she felt his warmth. "They like you." "That was liking me?" Diana only eviscerates people she thinks might be worth keeping. He turned to face her. "I need a mate who can hold her own, against my council, against other alphas, against me when necessary." Mate, he said it so casually, like it was inevitable. Maybe it was. The week passed in a strange, suspended rhythm. Darius worked, meetings, patrols, pack business, and Mira shadowed him when invited, exploring when not. She met more wolves, learned the compound's geography, started to understand Ironwood's culture. It was rougher than Crescent Vale, more direct, but also more honest. Wolves said what they meant, fought when necessary, and didn't pretend politeness when they disagreed. She liked it. Evenings, she and Darius ate dinner together. Sometimes they talked, about packs, about their families, about the careful dance of building something new. Sometimes they just existed in comfortable silence. On the 5th night, she asked about the Alpha Challenge that had given him control.
"He was old guard," Darius said, "believed in bloodline over skill, tradition over adaptation. The pack was dying slowly under his leadership, wolves leaving, pups underfed, territory shrinking. I gave him a year to change. He didn't, so I challenged. And you won." "I survived." He looked at his hands, those scarred, capable hands. "Barely. He was stronger than I expected, fought dirty, but I was faster, younger, more desperate." A pause. "I didn't want to kill him, but he wouldn't yield." "Regret it?" "Ending him? No. How it happened? Sometimes." He met her eyes. "Leadership means hard choices. I've made hundreds since then. Some I'm proud of, some keep me awake at night. But the pack is thriving now. That's what matters." On the 6th night, her wolf couldn't take it anymore. They were sitting on the porch after dinner, watching stars emerge in the clear winter sky. Darius was close enough to touch, but not touching, maintaining that careful distance he'd kept all week. "Why haven't you kissed me?" Mira asked. He turned to her, those pale eyes reflecting starlight. "Because when I kiss you, you need to be sure, not curious, not testing. Sure. And if I am? Are you?" She should say no, should ask for more time, but her wolf was done waiting, and so was she. "Yes," she said. He moved slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she leaned in, meeting him halfway, and when their lips touched, something in her chest clicked into place.
The kiss was careful at first, almost tentative. Then Darius's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her jaw, and the kiss deepened. It was nothing like kissing Owen, safe, familiar, comfortable. This was fire and certainty and coming home all at once. When they finally pulled apart, her wolf was howling in triumph. "Stay," Darius said. Simple, direct, everything he was. "Yes," Mira said. "I'll stay." The mating ceremony happened 2 weeks later. Ironwood did things differently than Crescent Vale. No lengthy engagement, no elaborate planning, just the pack gathered in the central green under the full moon, witnesses to the alpha claiming his mate. Mira wore simple clothes, dark pants, white shirt, nothing fancy. Darius stood beside her in the circle's center, his hand in hers, and spoke the ancient words that bound them. "I, Darius Kael, Alpha of Ironwood, claim you, Mira Castellanos, as my mate, my equal, my partner, my chosen. I pledge you my protection, my loyalty, my truth, in this life and all lives to come." Then it was her turn. The words felt heavy on her tongue, weighted with finality. "I, Mira Castellanos, accept your claim. I pledge you my strength, my loyalty, my truth, as your mate, your equal, your chosen, in this life and all lives to come." The bond snapped into place, not like the severing with Owen, but like finding something she hadn't known was missing. Suddenly, Darius was there in her chest, vast and steady, a presence that felt like bedrock. His wolf twined with hers, and for the first time since the rejection, she felt whole. The wolves howled, and the sound echoed off the compound walls, filling the night. After, there was food and celebration. Wolves congratulated them, some warmly, some reservedly, all respectfully. Santi had come, her only guest from her old life, and he pulled her aside near midnight. "You're happy," he said, not a question. "I am." "He treats you well?" "He treats me like an equal, like I matter." She looked across the green to where Darius was talking with Rufus, his eyes finding hers even in conversation. "I never had that with Owen." "Then I'm glad for you," Santi hugged her, "but I'm still going to threaten him later, brother's prerogative." She laughed. "He'd be disappointed if you didn't." Later, much later, when the celebration wound down and the pack dispersed, Darius led her to their room, not the guest room anymore, but the master bedroom, his space that was now hers too. He kissed her at the threshold, deep and claiming, and her wolf sang. "No regrets?" he asked against her mouth. "None," she said. And she meant it. 3 months later, spring came to Ironwood. Mira stood on the Alpha residence's porch watching wolves work in the gardens, pups tumbling in the newly green grass, patrols changing shifts. Her pack, her home. Darius came up behind her, arms sliding around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That Owen did me a favor. If he hadn't rejected me, I'd never crossed into your territory, never found this. Fate works in strange ways. You believe in fate? I believe in wolves knowing what they need." He turned her to face him. "And my wolf needed you." Past tense? Needs, present, future, always. He kissed her there in the morning light with the pack moving around them, and felt nothing but certainty. Sometimes rejection was the universe making room for what was supposed to be. And this, Darius, Ironwood, the bond that felt inevitable, this was exactly what was supposed to be.